Human design is form knowledge. It's knowledge of your form. It's knowledge about your body. And the mind is secondary. The mind is important for watching, for learning, for being aware. But it's really about the body. So human design can show you how your mind works, but the goal is not that you give the mind more power or the mind more control. The goal of human design is actually to usurp the power from the mind so that the body gets the power. The body gains the power to make decisions. And the idea is that when the body makes decisions, this eliminates resistance, that we get so much resistance in life from our mental decision making. When the body can make the correct decision, it guides the life on a trajectory that is correct for it, and it takes you to the right places, you meet the right people, the right things happen for you, and you gain what is your potential, which is going to be unique to you, the unique potential to differentiate and to become more fully yourself. When we make decisions with our mind, we end up homogenized. We end up trying to be like everyone else. We're trying to be like other people. So human design gives you this blueprint, the body graph. It gives you a map, essentially, of how you're designed and how you're made to function at a mechanical level. And it shows you in this body graph what you can and cannot trust. It shows you essentially what parts of you are consistent and what isn't consistent in you. So if you look at your body graph, you'll see there are some centers, areas of the chart that are filled in, they're colored in, and these are areas that have definition, they're defined, they're consistent aspects of your genetic makeup and who you are as a person. Then there are other areas that are open. These areas of openness are where you see other people and where you are influenced by other people, where you take them in. But these are not you. Now, these open areas are not bad. There's nothing wrong with them. It's simply that our whole lives we've been trusting them to make decisions. See, these open areas, that's where the mind comes in. And the mind is going to make decisions to try to protect our vulnerability. For instance, you have an open solar plexus. The solar plexus is the emotional center. It's that triangle on the right side of the chart, the sideways triangle. Now, having an undefined solar plexus as an emotional center means you're going to be highly susceptible to others' emotional states. This is the classic empath configuration where someone else is feeling happy and you're feeling even happier. They're feeling sad and you're feeling even sadder. It's essentially amplifying, taking in anything that they're feeling. And what's going to happen here is that because the mind is trying to make a strategy of its own to counteract this vulnerability, there's going to be a strategy of avoiding confrontation and truth. Because you don't want to confront somebody with a painful truth if they're going to have an emotional reaction and you're going to have to deal with all that emotional stuff. So that's just one example, and we can go into more detail about how the centers work. But the gist of it is you basically are given this body graph, this chart that shows you who you are or how you're designed, what potentials you have, and it also shows you who you're not, and that's the not self. The not self is going to be the openness in the chart, the undefined areas. And that's where the mind comes in and makes its own mental decision making. So, you are a generator. The generator is here to respond. You're a generator because you have sacral definition. That's the square, the second from the bottom on the body graph. That's the sacral center. Now, the sacral center is the life force of the world. It's the life energy. It's fertility. It's the energy to work, to get work done. And that sacral center is designed to respond. It doesn't initiate, it responds. So what this means is it's there so that when something comes along and something happens, it can respond to that. It's very responsive. In the mystical perspective, you would say it is yin, not yang. Yang is about the active, dominant, masculine principle, and yin is the feminine, receptive principle. And the generator is yin. So the generator is here to respond. Now, because we live in such a conditioned, homogenized world, generators are conditioned to be go-getters. They're conditioned to go out there and just make it happen, do it, to take the initiative, to start on their own. But they're not here to start. They're here to respond to things. Responding is very different from initiating. When you respond, you walk up to order your coffee and you don't say anything. And then the person says, "Can I get you something?" And you go, "Well, what would you like?" And then you tell them what you want. A generator who wakes up in the morning and sees the other person and says, "Hi there, how's it going?" That other person's not going to hear them. They're not going to even notice them because the generator is not being themselves. It's going to annoy the other person. It's going to bring resistance. The generator is not supposed to start conversations. The generator is not supposed to initiate actions and activities. They can respond to them, or they can bring something up. But even then, it's like two generators working together. One might say, "Hey, that movie's playing over there." Then the other generator goes, "Oh, do you want to see it?" Then the first one says, "Uh-huh." Then asks the second one, "Do you want to see it?" The second one goes, "Mm-hmm." And then they can go because they're responding to each other. That response is, there's something beautiful about two generators talking to each other and trusting that response. Now, the thing about the sacral is that the sacral communicates through sounds. It communicates through uh-huh, uh-uh, yeah, sigh, all that. That's all sacral. The sacral is going to make noises. It's going to make sounds. And that's where the truth is. So if someone says, "Do you want to go see that movie?" and you say, "Yeah," that means no. Because the sound isn't right. The sound isn't there. You're saying yes, mentally, verbally, but that's no. So something to realize that you can start listening to your own tone of voice and noticing in your tone of voice whether you feel engaged, whether you feel vitalized, or whether it seems like a drag. Because generators are not here to do things that seem like a drag. Generators are here to do things that excite them, that vitalize them. If someone says, "Do you want to help me move my couch?" Well, you know what? Some generators, depends on the person. You might go, "Uh-huh, yeah, sounds good." But then you also might go, "Uh-huh, yeah, I would like to do that." That means no, because the tone of voice, yeah, that's a non-sacral tone of voice. Similarly, you might be asked a yes or no question and try to deny it. Like, "Do you like that song?" And maybe you're embarrassed about the song. No, of course I don't like it. Right? But if you really don't like something, do you like it? No. Do you like that thing? It's spontaneous. It's natural. It's like my joke about generators. If they say they love you, you don't really know. But if you ask them, do you love me? And they go, uh-huh. Well, that's a pretty good indication. It's spontaneous, it's natural. The sound is made in response. It's a natural response. So this is called sacral response. So being a generator, you're really here to work on things that are satisfying to you. And if you don't find things that are satisfying, you're going to find frustration. That's the opposite of satisfaction. You're just going to find frustration. And so working on things that are satisfying, you have tremendous power to work. Not everyone's here to work. Not everyone has the energy to work. The generator themselves doesn't have the energy to work if it's something that is exhausting in a bad way. There's a good exhaustion. In fact, the generator should go to sleep at night exhausted. But that's like satisfied exhausted. Like go to sleep fully satisfied and exhausted in having used your energy for things that are satisfying. And that could just be, it could be something like moving a couch. It doesn't have to be, going to a nice restaurant or whatever. That actually might not be satisfying. It might not be exhausting in a satisfying way. So only the sacral knows. The mind is going to try to second guess it and think, well, these are the kind of things I like. These are the kind of things I dislike. That's the mind. It's actually, generators are here to actually discover what they do and don't like. Because we've assumed, I'm a generator also, so I'll speak in personal experience. I've assumed my whole life that I like certain things and dislike certain things. And the fact is, I've been surprised what my sacral responds to. I might think that I really enjoy a certain activity, but someone asks me and I go, yeah, I enjoy that, which means no, I don't enjoy it. So the point of learning about yourself as a generator is to learn how to trust your sacral authority, to trust the strategy of waiting to respond, and to trust the authority of the sacral center responding, making sounds. So being a generator, we're really here to commit our energy to things that are satisfying to us. But it's not always easy to know what those are. We have to sometimes wait until we're given an opportunity to respond. And sometimes our mind is telling us we have to do something else, when actually our sacral is already responding to something. Maybe there's a generator who's playing a lot of video games and their mind is telling them, what's wrong with you? Why don't you do something else? But their sacral is responding to that video game. Like if someone asks them, do you want to play? They're like, uh-huh. They're just into it. They're locked in. The sacral can get really into certain things. Well, they might think it's terrible, but then who knows? Maybe a couple months go by and they apply for a job and they meet somebody at the job who plays the same game as them and they have a bonding experience over it. You just never know. Life works in mysterious ways like that where, if your sacral is responding to it, it's correct for you. That's all you need to know. And people ask, well, what if someone says, do you want to be a fisher in this island? Do you want to go be a whale fisher? Or go hunt whale blubber with whatever, some bizarre question. And then what then? If I say, uh-huh, I do, well, then do it. That's the thing. Like, there's a little bit of a mental game here where people are afraid that if they just follow their sacral, that they're going to lose all common sense, they're going to lose morality, they're going to make bad decisions. It's actually the opposite. You start making good decisions when you do that. You might find the perfect apartment, it's the right price, the right neighborhood, the right everything, and someone says, do you want to move into this apartment? And you're just like, and you actually don't. And then that's wrong for you. Or you might think you're in the perfect job and someone asks you if you're happy there, and your sacral goes, no, I'm not, and you can't deny it. And over time you get more and more used to expressing those sacral sounds, because a lot of it is we're conditioned not to make those sounds. We don't want to be like a cave person or something, grunting and making these noises. And there's such a homogenizing force of society out there that pushes us all to communicate using words, but actually these sounds can be our truth. The words are not necessarily our truth. The sounds are what's going to get us in touch with our truth. So being a generator is about waiting to respond. It's about trusting your sacral center. It's about trusting that if you make decisions sacrally, that you will be guided correctly in life. Now, the generator has an enveloping aura. Part of being a generator is that you have this large magnetic aura that draws people to you. It's a very attractive aura. Not every type has that. Some types have more resistant auras, or they have repulsive, repelling auras. But the generator has an attractive aura which draws things out of people. So that's another interesting point, is that if you wait to respond, you might think, well, I'll be waiting a long time. Nobody's going to ask me. Nobody's going to ask me that question. But there's something about the generator aura that it draws these questions out of people. It draws yes or no questions out of people. In fact, if you just don't initiate as an experiment, you just remain silent, people will start to notice and ask you even more. And this is what's so interesting. The generator can feel so frustrated that they feel like they're pushing all the time, coming up against resistance, and this is because they're initiating. And as soon as they wait and respond, wait for the other, wait for something to come to them, wait to be asked a question, suddenly they have all the power. So, looking at your body graph, you have your sacral and your G center defined. They're connected by a channel, the 2946. And that's a channel, I associate it with being fully experiential. It's an experiential channel, so it wants to have experience. It wants to have life experience. And something about experience is that experience is not necessarily meant to be repeated. There are people out there who are very logical, and logic is meant to be repeated. And the experiential always thinks it's logical. It's always saying how logical it is, but it's different. The experiential is actually about having an experience once. And once you've had it, you don't need to have it again. So once you've done something, you've already done it. That thing had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And once it's over, it's already been done. It doesn't need to be done again. This is very different from logic, where logic is about repeating the same thing over and over and over again. So when you have an experiential channel like this, it can actually be hell to be stuck in something where you're having to do the same thing again and again and again to perfect it. An experiential person is going to do so much better learning many different instruments or having many different life experiences compared to going to the same piano lessons every week for years and years and years. So being experiential, something to realize about that dynamic is that you're designed to be fully immersed in experience. And one of the keys here is that to be fully immersed in experience, you can't analyze it while you're in it. Now, this isn't to say that you'll automatically be fully in things. This is how you're designed. But again, you'll just as likely be wanting to be fully immersed in something, but unable to because you're analyzing it. You're thinking about it. You're comparing it. Experiences are not comparable. They're not meant to be compared. Again, that's back in the realm of logic. With logic, you're repeating something and you're comparing the different iterations. But with what you have is experiential, it's also called abstract circuitry. What it's really about for you is to have a singular experience which you can then return to again and again and abstract from it later. But while you're in it, you have to be fully immersed in it. So the practical advice here is when you have an experience, don't even try to make sense of it. Don't even try to understand it. Don't try to compare it. Don't, you're eating the food. Don't say, well, this is pretty good. Well, I don't know about that. That's a little undercooked. Don't even make any commentary on it whatsoever. Just fully immerse yourself in the experience of eating. And that goes for everything. Because the more you try to make sense of things as they're happening, the less you'll be able to be fully immersed in those experiences. And you're designed to be immersed in experiences. And in fact, when you are fully immersed, you have great luck. This is the channel of synchronicity. This is a channel of tremendous luck, of good things happening because you're in the right place at the right time. You're in a flow. It's a tantric channel, not tantric in the kind of popularized notion of sexual technique, but tantric in the sense of moving the kundalini energy from transmuting that sexual energy into purpose. And so this is about taking that sacral energy, that fertility energy, and transmuting it into a life purpose or a direction or something higher in the G center, which is the center of spirit, the diamond in the middle of the chart. So having that 4629 is really about being fully immersed in experiences in a way that you enter into a flow that brings you synchronistic occurrences, that everything just flows. Now the 46 is love of the body. And again, this is not sexual. It's not a sexual channel. It's about loving the body in the sense of going to the spa, of massage, of worshiping the body as the vessel that carries us, as the vessel of spirit that carries our spirit. And so this worship of the body is deeply connected to being in the right place at the right time, which means it's important for you to be comfortable, to be enjoying your body, to be enjoying being incarnated in your body, and to be fully immersed in that bodily experience. Because again, this will bring you the right sequence of events, the right synchronistic good luck events. Now, the 29, which is the other part of that channel, is the gate of saying yes. It's about commitment. And so, at its worst, you're going to say yes to everything. That's the real problem here, saying yes to everything. Now, at its best, it can give you tremendous commitment to the experience, to seeing the experience through to the end without questioning when it will be over. Because again, when you're fully immersed in experience, you're not thinking about where you are in that experience. You're fully immersed in it. You're existential. You're fully existing in that experience, merging with that experience. So this is how you're designed. You're designed to go into an experience, to fully merge with it, to experience it completely, and not to question when it will be over, or to try to make sense of it, or to try to judge it, or to try to understand it in any way, until after it's over. Then you can return to it and see what you've learned from it. The 4629 is collective. Being collective, it's about sharing. You want to share experiences with people. You want to share excitement with people. You want to share novelty with people. You want to share all these things in your existential adventure of going from one thing to the next to the next. And something to realize is that the sharing is impersonal. It's not always personal. So being a fully collective being, you're not really here to take things personally, and you're also not here to, for other people to take things you've done personally. The collective being, for instance, often just wants to have an experience for the sake of having that experience. And it's important to realize that someone who's not collective, someone who's tribal, for instance, the tribe is very sticky. It's like glue. It's like you have an experience with them and they think you're bonded for life. The tribe experiences intimacy as a way to get support, basically, and to have consistent support. And so they exchange intimacy as a sort of a bargain, where part of the bargain is, because they've exchanged that intimacy, the other person now owes them a certain amount of support, whether it's emotional, financial, however you look at it. Well, the collective is not about that. The collective does not have strings attached in that way. The collective is about having an experience for the sake of the experience, and when it's over, it's over. And you're not expecting this experience to lead to a bargain of material support with someone else. Or at least you might be expecting that, but if so, that's the homogenized conditioning of the tribalism of the world. Because we all grow up in tribal situations, whether it's our families or places of employment, our schools. These are all very tribal institutions because it's tribal in the sense that you have to follow the rules, you have to contribute, you are supported in exchange for being supportive yourself, you have to make promises and keep those promises. This is all tribalism. The collective isn't about that. The collective wants to share, that's all. It just wants to share. It wants to share its experiences. It wants to share what it enjoys. It wants to share what's exciting to it. It wants to share its opinions and its ideas. All of this is part of the collective, but none of that sharing is personal. It's not a personal thing. And people get that confused. They're in a relationship with a collective person, or what they see as a relationship. To that collective person, it's an adventure. To the collective person, they're sharing an adventure with someone else. They're sharing experiences with someone else. And that's enough. The experiences can be cherished and returned to anytime they want. The experience can be crystallized and can be understood later. I mean, again, you're not supposed to understand the experience as it's happening, but you can go back to it anytime you want and learn different things from it, like looking at it through a prism. So the collective is impersonal, and this can trip up a lot of people because they don't necessarily see that, and they start to have expectations around a certain level of continued support or tribal expectations. And there's a real conflict between the collective and the tribe, that the collective wants to share and the tribe wants support. And they're different things. Yes, the collective can share its resources with you, but it's different than making a promise and sticking to that promise. Looking at the undefined centers, there's a hierarchy in terms of the impact of the not-self. So when we look at the undefined centers, what we're basically looking at is how the not-self is going to operate. That is, how the mind is going to pull you away from who you really are. Because we've already looked at who you are. You're here to respond. You're here to trust your sacral. You're here to trust the sounds that you make in response to things. And you might think it's easy, but I would say it's simple, not easy. It's simple in the sense that there is a simple thing to do. You simply trust those sounds. But it's not easy because all of these different open centers are going to be vying for control, fighting over control of your decision-making process. So like I said earlier about the solar plexus, that one doesn't want to confront people. It doesn't want to rock the boat. It doesn't want to hurt their feelings because you're so open emotionally to them and so empathic and so connected to their emotional state that if they're happy, you're even happier. If they're sad, you're even sadder. So who wants to make someone sad, you know? Who wants to confront them in a way that disappoints them? So what's going to end up happening is someone asks you, do you want to be in a relationship with me? And your sacral would go, nope, Your sacral is just like, what a drag. No way. But because of that open solar plexus, you don't want to hurt their feelings. So the mind jumps in, and suddenly there's this not-self theme of avoiding confrontation, avoiding the painful truth, escaping. And so you tell them, no, of course I do, and you try to reassure them and try to reassure yourself that you really want to be with them even though you don't. And so this is how the not-self works, and it works through our openness. Now these open centers become the greatest sources of wisdom. They have the potential to be great sources of wisdom. And that potential comes when we no longer let them control our lives. Because then we're able to experience through these open centers. We're able to take in the other and experience the other. So that open solar plexus, which was controlling your life because making decisions around not wanting to offend people, not wanting to hurt their feelings, well, suddenly you don't care about that anymore. You're making decisions according to your sacral response, regardless of anything else. So that frees up this center to observe, to watch, to see. Now you're able to see clearly others' emotional states and realize it's not you, it's them, it's their emotional state. That you're not the one who's sad. They're sad and you're feeling sad around them, and you don't have to feel sad. You can observe that feeling. You can feel that feeling. You can express it. You can even savor it. But you don't have to identify with it. You don't have to say, that's me. You can experience it as it passes through you. And it's like this with all the centers. So there's a hierarchy, as I mentioned, and the hierarchy is in terms of impact. And there's the strongest to the weakest impact. Now, the weakest impact is what we're going to show other people. And the strongest impact is the foundation. It's the fundamental dilemma. It's the core of who we are deep down inside. Well, who we're not. That's the funny thing. It's the core of how we experience ourselves. But again, this is about the not self. This is about the mind. So when I say the core of who we are, I should, as a caveat, when we're making mental decision making. It's the core of our identity wrapped up in that mental decision making. Who we really are, the real core of who we are, is in the definition. So who you really are is that potential to differentiate that comes from following your sacral response, which is really unpredictable. Who knows who you will become or what you will be if you start making every decision in your life based on You know, if you actually make every decision based on this sacral response, nobody can predict that. What we can predict is the not self, because the not self is a homogenized mental plane that essentially follows these constructs. It follows these particular constructs that have been passed on for thousands and thousands of years. So that's predictable. So the weakest not self conditioning you have is in the undefined throat. That undefined throat is looking for attention. It's feeling ignored. It's feeling like it walks up to order the coffee and the barista's not going to notice it, and it's saying, excuse me, and the barista is still not responding. It's worried people won't notice it, that it won't be seen, that it won't be heard. It's feeling ignored. So it's trying to get attention. So that's what people are going to see. This is the weakest, the least impactful theme. But that's what we show the world. We show the world this least impactful theme, and then deep underneath we have our core fundamental not self theme. So you're showing the world that trying to get attention, pay attention, trying to get them to listen to you, trying to get them to notice you. But that's just what you show them. What's deep underneath that is the ego. And the ego is a powerful conditioning force. It is the center of tribalism. As I mentioned earlier, the tribe is all about making promises. Well, the ego is about making promises. And when you have an undefined ego, you have inconsistent willpower. Inconsistent ability to exert willpower. And it brings so much shame. It brings so much blaming yourself and feeling like there's something wrong, feeling defective. The undefined ego is its own worst critic. It's inconsistent self-esteem. So it's trying to prop itself up by making promises. It's trying to improve itself. Here's the thing. Here's the secret. You have undefined ego. You have nothing to prove. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. But it can feel like you have everything to prove. It can feel like you're always having to prove things. You also have nothing to improve. That's the irony. That's the strange thing. All of this human design, all of these things, they seem like self-improvement. It's not about improving. People who have defined ego, sure, they can improve. They're supposed to. But for us, yeah, we can change, we can grow, we can learn. But it's not about improvement, because improvement implies that there's something wrong that has to be fixed. And that's part of the undefined ego. It feels like there's something wrong with it. It feels defective. It feels like it has to improve and get better. And this is the deepest, deepest, deepest not self-conditioning. This is underneath everything else. So, yeah, on that surface you have the undefined throat trying to get attention. Well, underneath, it's trying to get approval. That's different. Getting approval from someone else is very different from getting their attention. So the undefined ego, it's searching for that approval. It's yearning for someone or something to make it feel good about itself. And there's very specific ways it's going to do this. We can actually look at the details of the chart, and we can see you have gate 40. Gate 40 is activated. This is one of the love gates. This is about loving to work for other people in exchange for them loving you back. So this is a gate that's seeking approval through working hard for others. It's saying, I have to get better at helping them. I have to get better at, I have to help them. It's also a trust gate. It's a loyalty gate. I'll prove to you how loyal I am. I'll prove to you how trustworthy I am. I'll prove to you that I have the capacity to do it, and I'll do this by working for you and giving so much to you. I'm going to give and give and give. The undefined ego loves to give praise. It loves to give gratitude. It loves to give thanks. We're not here to give praise or gratitude or anything if there's any inkling of a string attached to it, because we're not here to bargain. Don't make promises. You have nothing to prove. You have nothing to improve. How wild to live your life without making promises. And I have people say, well, how will anyone trust me? Well, they'll trust your sacral response. They'll trust you when they ask you a question and you go, uh-huh, or uh-uh, because they can trust that, because that has the force, the power of who you really are behind it. So the ego is a deep, deep, deep conditioning force that's essentially controlling our whole mental decision-making process. So when you're making mental decisions, yes, there are these other themes. I don't want to rock the boat. I want people to notice me. But underneath all this is, I want their love. I want their respect. I want their admiration. I want their approval. I want their validation. And the way I'm going to get it is by proving to them how trustworthy I am, by making promises, by proving how loyal I am. Now there's channels coming off the ego, and they're all open. And these open channels are essentially feeling like you're all alone in this task. There's a theme of blame and denial there. Like, I don't have problems being courageous and jumping into the unknown. Other people are too timid. I don't have problems saying it like it is. Other people are wishy-washy. I don't have control issues. Other people are controlling. All of these are ego issues. The worst thing you can tell someone with an undefined ego is, I don't trust you. You don't have the capacity. You don't have the stamina. You're not brave. These terrible things for the ego, because again, with this undefined ego, there's so much investment in this identity of being someone who's trustworthy and loyal. Now we go on to the second strongest, and that's the solar plexus, which I touched on. The solar plexus doesn't want to rock the boat. It doesn't want to hurt people. It doesn't want to offend them. And it thinks they can't handle it because it's an awareness center, so it's about how we see others. It's undefined. It's all about they can't handle the truth. I don't want to hurt them because they couldn't handle it. They would freak out. And again, there could be the denial and the blame. I don't have a problem with intimacy. Other people have problems with intimacy. I'm not worried about, Now, in this case, though, you'll notice that you have 4 what are called hanging gates pointing at the solar plexus. So if you look at that triangle on the right side of the chart, and you'll see that it's being pointed at from the 40 and the ego, from the 59 and the sacral, from the 39 and the 41 and the root. These are going to be pointing at the solar plexus, and that's going to potentially raise the dilemma of feeling like you need to have something there that you don't have, feeling like you have a shortcoming. So without going into too much detail, I'll say that with gate 30, that might be feeling like the fates always get in the way. Gate 30 is the gate of fate, and so it's feeling like if you really trust and you really open up and you really let people get close to you, that something's going to intervene. Something will get in the way. There'll be problems. Now, the interesting thing about the solar plexus is it's keeping a distance from other people. It's about maintaining a distance. And that distance is because you don't want them to see who you really are, because they might not be able to handle you. They might not be able to handle the truth of who you are. Now, on the other side, on the left side, we have the spleen, and that's also undefined. And the spleen is about whether you feel good or not, whether you feel safe or not, whether you feel healthy or not. And it's going to actually want to pull people closer, particularly people that make you feel good, that make you feel safe, that make you feel healthy, that make you feel just warm inside. So when you have both of these undefined, the not-self theme is essentially clinging tightly to people, not wanting to let go of them, even if they're not good for you, while simultaneously keeping them at arm's length and having a distance from people. It's like, I'm not going to let go of you, but at the same time, I don't want you to see who I really am because you might not be able to handle me. The root at the bottom is a pressure center. So that's all about the pressure to hurry, the pressure to get things done, the pressure that you have to be in a hurry, that you can't relax until you get all of your tasks done. And it's going to be pushing with this pressure to always be in a hurry, to get it done in time, to get it done early. Moving up to the top, we have the head and the ajna. The head is also a pressure center. That's at the very top of the body graph. And the not-self theme there is going to be thinking about things that don't matter, trying to answer other people's questions, trying to make sense of confusion for them, trying to know things and find out things, all as a way to be free from mental pressure. You're feeling mental pressure from others and you want to be free from that pressure. So the top and the bottom centers are both pressure centers. The head at the top with the mental pressure, the root at the bottom with the adrenaline pressure. So the not-self theme of these pressure centers is going to be based around, I'm going to be in a hurry to try to answer your questions and make sense of things for you. I'm going to be in a hurry to try to be free from this pressure. And then the ajna, that's the triangle below the head center, is trying to be certain. It's trying to be sure of things. It's trying to know that it can be sure, and it doesn't want to be caught out when it doesn't know something and it's not sure about something. It's really embarrassing for it to be wrong. It doesn't want to be caught out being uncertain. So we can synthesize these and say that you're trying to be sure about your answers for other people, and you're in a hurry to solve those so you can hold on to them so they don't leave you, and also so you don't hurt them and you don't offend them. And all of this with the ego as the foundational, not self-center, trying to seek their approval and seek their love and admiration and respect. So these all synthesize together to create a mental decision-making strategy which really dominates the life. It dominates everyone's life. The mental decision making of, basically avoiding frustration and this fantasy, if only I improve myself, I can avoid frustration. If only I don't rock the boat, I'll avoid frustration. If only I'm able to be useful to other people and solve their problems. And if only I'm certain in all of these themes. If only I can cling tightly to them and not let go, I'll be free from frustration. But that's not the answer. Human design is about trusting your strategy and authority. It's about trusting what is deep within you, really, not the deep mental conditioning, but the actual bodily intelligence that expresses itself, in your case, through the sacral. So it's an experiment. It's an experiment in what is life like if I make decisions following my inner strategy and authority. If I make decisions following what is me instead of what isn't me. Let's see. There's so much more to human design. I haven't even scratched the surface of profile, which is how you express yourself in the world and how you interact in the world. In your case, as an overview, you're going to be here to experiment, to try things out, and to find out what works and doesn't work through a trial and error process. And that trial and error process is going to be potentially leading you to martyr yourself, in the sense that you will be the one who stands up to the boss and says this isn't working. You'll be the one who overthrows the existing structure and burns it down because it's not functional. You'll be the one to raise the alarms. But the third line process is here to make mistakes. It's necessary to make mistakes. All innovation, all scientific progress, all personal growth and progress comes through having made mistakes and learning from those mistakes. So there can be a deep pessimism of the third line, of this feeling that nothing ever works right. There's also a need to see for yourself. So everything I'm telling you is meant to be experimented with so you can see for yourself, and you can also find out what doesn't work. The third line is here to find out what doesn't work. You might take this information and experiment with it and find out that some of it doesn't work, in which case you can then tell me, and I'll have that feedback. So the third line is really here to discover what doesn't work in life. But if you don't know that, it can feel like nothing works, and it can feel like something's wrong, because you can see how things work smoothly for some people, but not for you. And the fact is, they're not here to work smoothly for you. This is your profile. You're a 3-5 profile. And without going into the details about the lines, I'll simply say there are 6 lines in the Chinese hexagram in the I Ching. And the third line is here to experiment, to find out what works and what doesn't, to go through a trial and error process. It has a theme of bonds made and broken. So it's a theme of bonding and breaking that bond, and bonding and breaking that bond again and again and again. And it needs this flexibility, this fluidity. It's an adaptive line. It needs a certain amount of chaos. The unconscious 5th line is a projection line, meaning that people project on you. You project an image out to the world, and they see in this projection, almost like an ink blot, what they think you might be able to do for them. There's a lot of expectation there. So the third line might enter into a job, and really it just wants to test things out and see what works and what doesn't. But other people might be expecting you to fix everything. The third line is not here to fix, it's here to break things. It's here to break what doesn't stand the test of time, and to break the old and the unworthy. But there's so much more to human design. In an overview reading like this, I don't typically go much further, simply because the strategy and authority are the core of human design. Knowing that you're a generator, that you're here to respond, that you have sacral authority that's going to respond in sounds. This is so important. This is the key. And then going through the not self centers and how the not self works through the open centers, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to observe. I mean, you can really just follow strategy and authority and nothing else matters. As long as you're making decisions according to sacral authority, everything else falls into place. The reason I'm telling you this extra information is because it gives some comfort to the mind, because the mind can feel like it's losing control. It can feel suspicious or paranoid about what's going to happen if it doesn't make decisions anymore, about all the frustration it thinks it will experience if it stops making decisions. But this is the experiment. The experiment is what happens if you make decisions with your body, not your mind. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And there are many, many layers of this onion. So it's been a pleasure looking at your chart. I'm always happy doing a reading for a generator. As a generator myself, I feel a special affinity. And I also have a lot of empathy for the third lines in the world because they've helped me so much. And also because being a third line is not the easiest. You're very resilient because you have to be. You have to be resilient because things don't work right, things break. You break them even. But the reason that you're able to break them is that they weren't solid in the first place. And you're here to find out what is and what isn't. And it's a mutative process. You're here to facilitate that change and that transformation. It's an evolutionary process, and I have a lot of respect for that. So it's been a pleasure doing a reading for you, and I wish you all the best in your process.